Estamos ao vivo. Vamos ver se está tudo ok. Estamos ao vivo. Testando 1, 2. Testando 1, 2. Hoje aqui como é que tá? Vamos ver se está tudo ok. Estamos ao vivo. Testando 1, 2. Testando 1, 2. Hoje aqui como é que tá? Pior que eu não tô ouvindo nada. Vamos ver se está tudo ok. Testando 1, 2. Estamos ao vivo. Testando 1, 2. Testando 1, 2. Hoje aqui como é que tá? Pior que eu não tô ouvindo nada. Vamos ver se está tudo ok. Testando 1, 2. Estamos ao vivo. Testando 1, 2. Testando 1, 2. Hoje aqui como é que tá? Pior que eu não tô ouvindo nada. Vamos ver se está tudo ok. Testando 1, 2. Show. Vamos aqui no nosso querido Pix. Então galera, iniciando aqui uma live aqui pra gente acompanhar o resumo aqui do AMA, né, de hoje, quarta-feira, dia 15 de maio. Enquanto não inicia, faltam 2 minutos. Deixa eu fazer aqui a nossa rotação. 2 minutos para iniciar o AMA. Um minuto para iniciar. Vamos aqui no... Vamos lá logo. Teatro é aqui em cima, tá? Pra quem não sabe. Pra quem não sabe, aqui tem 2 entradas. Pouca gente ainda aqui. Vamos abrir aqui para ver. Clica aqui para live do streaming. Vamos clicar. YouTube, conexão com o YouTube foi recusada. Assim. Mas será que não? Não tá abrindo. Estranho, cara. Já começou. Começou aqui o evento. O amigo aqui, o nosso amigo, esse Mickey aqui já tá ao vivo também. O parceiro aqui já tá
mundial.
Pega daqui, filho.
Pode me ajudar aqui, irmão?
Licença, tio.
Vamos ver aqui se ele já tá
galera,
conseguindo
salve galera da
conectar.
Twitch, salve galera do YouTube, como é que vocês estão? Tranquilos,
Valeu,
suaves?
parceiro aí já tá ao vivo também.
Essa tarde de quarta-feira, tranquilaço. Eu dormi mal pra caceta. Eu vou tentar dormir, sei lá, umas 9 horas da noite no máximo.
Queria saber como é que faz pra botar esse fundo aqui, ó.
Cara, peguei uma insônia do cão.
Se alguém souber aí.
Mas enfim, Hoje sai a data do capítulo 2, se Deus quiser, meuzinho. Se Deus quiser, que tá braba a situação. Mas vamos ver.
Verdade.
Eu acho que não, cara. Eu acho que vai ser lançado
Eu também acho que não.
ali, no máximo, a primeira semana de junho, cara. Eu acho que vai demorar um pouco ainda. Não vai sair hoje, final do mês pra início de junho, tá? Salve! Opa!
Então vamos voltar aqui. Vamos ver se já dá pra abrir. Cara, não sei porque que o meu tá dando isso. Já começou o evento, mas eu não consigo abrir a página. Conexão recusada. Que é isso? Por que tá dando essa... Tá recusando por quê, cara? Será que se eu entrar e sair de novo dá certo? Vamos relogar aqui pra ver. O que tá dando isso daqui? Será que o amigo lá tá conseguindo?
A marca Eno tem tudo para cuidar da sua digestão do começo ao fim. Está cada vez mais completa para ser...
Daí,
O evento começou hoje já, eu não consegui baixar ele ainda.
onde ele tá cheio.
Deixa eu... Peraí, vou botar ele aqui.
Vê se é só a minha que tá dando aquele problema.
Vou ver as transferências. Não, quero ver transferência. Peraí que eu vou baixar, vou ter que baixar o APK, mano. Transferência assim. Deixa eu cancelar isso aqui. Aqui tá andando, tá.
Sabe como é que eu boto a minha cara desse jeito aqui, igual o amigo aqui,
O
cara?
APK pra jogar. Vamos começar já aqui.
Ué, ele já...
Só parar a música.
Ah, ele deu certo. Aqui a Range já falando.
Nossa, a voz dela tá baixa.
Pix Live Stream.
Peraí. Não, a voz dela tá realmente baixa. Tá, deixa eu guardar isso aqui, depois eu vou dar uma olhada. Joguinho chegando.
Pix, ah tá. Aqui eu consigo acompanhar por aqui.
Yeah, I can swipe it really quick.
Agora sim.
There we go. How is that? How is that?
That's good. Is mine still low?
Show.
I mean, I think I can hear you as well. So sorry. Appreciate the patience with all of us, guys.
Okay.
Máximo.
Like I said, my Wi-Fi might be a little finicky, so anyways, we're here.
Yeah,
we're
I want to
excited.
get like the studio set up today too. Yeah, no, excited to chat today, guys, too. So this AMA,
Vamos ver aqui.
essentially what I want to go over is like a transparent
É que
update
tá
and where we're
bugado
at,
mesmo.
what we're trying to get out, give you guys
Tá
some
bugado
context.
aqui.
I mean, yeah, I think the important part of the building in public is to also just kind of
Bugado.
be honest about where we're at with things sometimes, and just give you guys the details too. So what I will say when it comes to chapter 2 and the release date is I feel the best I have about where it is in like the last like 2 or 3 months. It's actually getting quite close now, and we were supposed to open up the farmhand testing this week. I'm still going to try to push for that by end of week. Essentially what we're going to do is we're going to get some of our farmhands, and if you don't know what farmhand is, essentially they're kind of like mini community leaders inside of Pixels. Maybe you can explain the farmhand role, like formally, Heidi, what that is, like who those people are. But we're gonna get them into the like preview environments, hopefully by end of week, if not early next week. And essentially, what we want now is we feel like Chapter 2 is in a good spot. Players like, why the heck did you do that? This makes no sense, or you didn't like think about this thing. So essentially, we're just trying to get all the FUD out of the way just with these farmhands first, so we can fix the mistakes that they might see as an issue, because they know the game better than anybody. Honestly, even like better than the dev team sometimes too, because they're in it every single day, and we have to go and build it, right? So basically, that's the last step that we need to get through until we actually release Chapter 2, and then it's going to go live. We talk about Chapter 2 all the time, and yeah, I mean, it's also frustrating to us and me as well too that it took so long to get out. It's one of those things where even just like on a personal level, as I'm trying to manage the company, I can only look at so many different areas at once, and also the team only has so many areas of focus at once that they can really do as well too. I think if you want the truthful, honest answer of why Chapter 2 has taken so long to get out, we got really honed in on the token launch, and basically like some of the basic work that we should have been doing for Chapter 2 just got like a little put off, or it wasn't like quite as organized as we wanted it to be. We finally got on top of that stuff. We're basically leveling up the org inside of Pixels right now. So that's been a lot of the work that I've been doing over the last month or so. Essentially, like the team kind of burned out after the token launch. That was nuts, just to give some context on that. Like the amount of work and the amount of grind this team put to actually make that all happen. It took a lot out of some people, including myself too. Now, on a personal level, I feel like the most energized I have about the work that we're about to do. The work that's coming up and like what the next year at Pixels looks like, but it took some time, right? So there's like a human level to all of us, right? Like I want to give props to the team. They've been absolute machines for the last year. A lot of what Pixels has become known for is getting out a ton of content really quickly, and we set a very high bar. So now basically when I'm thinking about how I want to build the future of Pixels, and that's what I'm going to spend a little bit of time today going over the AMA on, is how do we actually keep this up in a sustainable way for the team? How do we keep the speed, the iteration, the startup grind set going? And what are the changes internally that we need to make to processes externally? And then how are we going to set up Pixels to be something that sticks around for the next 5 to 10 years as well? So we're in an amazing spot because basically we get to build the building blocks of all of this right now. And it's the beginning of something that we're trying to build essentially. So like before token launch, truthfully, we were like really capital constrained. We had to prove things to people in order to actually get like the license to build what we wanted to. And now it's kind of a different stage for us, right? Where there's more trust in the general space on us kind of executing on this bigger vision that we might have now. And that's the great thing about leveling up when it comes to like an org, when it comes to like a founder too. I mean, I've had a ton of personal growth over the last 3 years. I probably personally wouldn't have been the right person to lead this 3 years ago. But now I personally feel like, it feels right for us to go in this direction. I feel like my skills are maybe in a better spot where, as I'm trying to build out org and the future of what this could be, it's in a better spot all around too. So a lot of the work that we're doing now is fixing internal processes to make sure that we have all this kind of stuff. And then we're also kind of moving on to the next stage of what Pixels will be looking like too. So we have Chapter 2 coming out, and that's a really key part of the future of Pixels, obviously. This is the first step to making the game of Pixels just a better game. That is the bare minimum that we need to be doing in order to succeed inside of Web3 gaming and in order to have like long-term success in this space, right? If we don't have a game that's enjoyable, that's a bit more varied and higher quality than the current version of the core game that you guys are playing now, even though I know you guys love it, you guys are having a good time, we have a higher level of like quality that we want to be getting out essentially. So Chapter 2 is the first step of that. And the other parts that we need to do to actually achieve this goal of good game quality is we need to start hiring a little bit more and getting more talent too. So we had a big AMA on like where we were at with that a little bit ago. Essentially, we started making some better moves on that, and we're in the better place to essentially get all this talent too. So how the future of like the Pixels internal team is going to look like is I'm kind of going to be splitting up into 3 teams, and this goes into the bigger vision of what we're doing here too. So essentially what we're going to start to do is we're going to start to basically split up the core team of Pixels that's working on the Pixels game into 2 teams. We have one team that we're going to start building out that is basically all around game systems, new types of tech, new types of core systems, and building out like new innovation basically. We'll have another team that's solely responsible for live ops. So essentially new content, things to do inside of the game, partnerships, like all the stuff that we've done pretty well. And I would say that's like a current strength of the team. So those 2 things are happening. Now, the other thing that we're working on, and this is actually the much bigger thing inside of Pixels, is we're really going all in on data analytics and like a bunch of new stuff there. So essentially, we're creating a third team internally inside of Pixels, and what that third team is going to be working on is essentially, like, I want to call it something crazy. I think we talked about this a little bit in previous AMAs, but it's going to be called Project Neo. I think we're calling it that. But essentially what we want to be doing is we want to be competing with the big dogs in like 2 to 3 years when it comes to gaming. Now, Pixel's aspirations are not to build a Web3 gaming company, to be completely honest. We want to build a gaming company that's using Web3 to innovate, essentially. And that's a big difference. So we're in a really interesting spot right now where we've actually captured like a pretty good percent of the market share inside of Web3 gaming. There's a lot of things to move on to inside of this. But when it comes to DAU or DAA, we're the clear leader in the space right now, which is amazing. There's a few other KPIs and metrics that we're going to start shifting our focus towards, and this all comes together inside of the vision, right? Like better gameplay, better data-driven analysis, a better focus on the KPIs that matter. So essentially what we're going to start moving towards, though, is like, how do we actually start to optimize some of these things that we're doing here, and how do we build a system or kind of a platform that makes this long-standing and long-lasting. So we talk a lot about daily active addresses inside of Pixels, and that's a good metric to look at, because I think one of the first barriers to Web3 gaming was proving that there could actually be real user adoption inside of Web3 gaming. If you remember the talks of about a year ago, a lot of people said there's no Web3 gamers. Web3 gamers don't exist. The market's too small. The TAM is too small. It's maybe not like a addressable niche. But the talk around that has changed a lot, mostly because of you guys who are playing Pixels. I think if you actually do a breakdown of Web3 gamers and where they're actually all at, Pixels is a large majority of all Web3 gamers that are active right now, which is absolutely nuts. So it's a cool thing to be at and a cool spot to be in. Now, we've kind of proven that there is a demand for Web3 games when it comes to the user side. What we actually need to start to think about more deeply is the business economics behind Web3 gaming. And it's interesting as we go on these AMAs, there's a bunch of different types of people that listen to these AMAs, right? Like there's actually a ton of other founders that listen to these AMAs. There's players, there's different types of players that listen to the AMAs. There's like creators that want to make content, all of this kind of stuff. So we talk about these AMAs and we go into these AMAs, there's different types of people I'm talking to. So like this type of person is maybe more of like the founder, like the person who cares about the company building side. Right now we'll start to get into like some of the player side in like 10 minutes after I just go on this rant, basically. But the thing that we're really working on here at Pixels and like the core tech that we're building out is around this user acquisition engine that we're building. I am so obsessed with like the business economics of games, which is kind of funny because I don't know how many other games founders are actually like, they care about this kind of stuff. It's like a good balance to have, right? Like you need people on the games team to care about games and like the love of the games. You also need this side too to actually make a business that works and kind of prove out that Web3 gaming is something that can actually stay in the long run. Because, if you don't have a business that works or like something sustainable in the ecosystem, the Web3 games you know and love will not stick around, basically. So there's good player interest alignment here. But yeah, the core tech that we're actually building out is kind of around the data analytics side at Pixels. We're in a really interesting spot because we have such a large player base, and because we have a live game, and because we have live rewards, that we have a set of data and basically learnings that nobody else in the space can touch. Now, if you know this in the task board, we've been tweaking the task board a lot. We do like variable rewards inside of the task board. And one of the biggest things that we're basically trying to learn is how do you grow a game without giving money to basically ad providers and instead directly giving your own users rewards. If we were a traditional Web2 game, what I would have had to have done if I wanted to grow Pixels is I would have had to go to basically VCs and raise a ton of money. I would have had to tell them, hey, these are our metrics. I'm seeing basically that we have like this amount of CAC, like our cost to acquire customers, like, 40 cents. Like the average like LTV, the average lifetime value of a user is like 55 cents. These economics make sense. So if you give me $30 million, I'll run $5 million in ad spend a month, and I think I'm going to get this return. Like that's the conversation I would have to have with an investor, basically. And that's kind of the way that most Web2 games grow. Or they sit on like a pile of cash that they had built from a previous game that they had run, and that's how they do it. Now, the interesting thing about Web3 is we've actually proven that you can grow games, at least in terms of user base, without spending money on ads. And it's through these direct-to-consumer rewards. And that's basically the mechanics you guys all know in the task board, play the airdrops, things like this, and they're quite effective for growth. Now, the thing that we're trying to prove out here is, can you still give out rewards to people and still make a sustainable business? Now, that's kind of the key question here. And if you want to look at our metrics, we share these a lot. There's public dashboards. I think the best metric of success for us, if you want to judge our progress over the next 6 months, is essentially how much we're cutting the deficit between the pixel that we give out inside of the game and the pixel getting spent inside of the game. It's kind of funny talking to you guys as players, because if I was a Web2 company, this would feel very extractive, right? I would be basically trying to build a business that gets you to play a game, and we want to take as much of your money as possible. Now, what's interesting about Web3 is the incentive alignment's a little bit different, right? So I don't feel weird talking to you guys about this, because I think there's an element of all of us just kind of wanting to see Web3 gaming work, right? Because no one's really pulled it off yet. And there's also an element of shared alignment too. You guys get the pixel token, and it's your decision to do whatever you want with it. But also the pixel token is something that we're doing, and it's all a part of this, right? So the interesting thing here is, essentially we're trying to figure out with Project Neo, or this tech around the data analytics side, is basically we're doing some stuff called user segmentation. So what that is, that means we basically look at the players inside of the game and we try to group them together. We try to figure out who are the users who behave in a certain way and do this automatically. The better that you get at this automatically and the more fine-tuned that you can get with it, the better. But essentially what we want to figure out through all the data that we have on users when it comes to the on-chain data, the play style and behaviors, all of this kind of stuff is, who are our users and how do they actually behave inside of the game? Next, what we want to do is we want to figure out, okay, who are the best groups of users to be giving out rewards to? Now, are there certain types of users inside of the game in the ecosystem that are, one, leading to more growth? So, for example, Southeast Asia. If we give you guys rewards, all the data that we have, you guys bring in a ton of users. That's actually super valuable to the ecosystem. So there's some things like that we want to look at, where it's play style, demographics, geography. These are all things that we look at too. Now, there's also maybe some other geographies that we might want to target too, because we know that they're typically spenders inside of the game and ecosystem. So a lot of the work that we're working on is essentially the system that can group these users, segment these users, and then determine if we give this user a given reward, what's the end effect, and how big should that reward be? Where in the user journey should these rewards come? Should they come at day one, or should they come later inside of the cycle of a player? Do you need to give a user a certain reward to stay in the game a little bit longer? If a user is about to churn, if a user is about to quit the game, does it make sense to give them a reward to stay? Well, there's some other questions too. Yeah, some other questions are okay, how do the different types of rewards to different types of users all interact with each other too? For example, there's players who are very earn motivated. That's not a bad thing. I don't think that's wrong at all. But also, if you only give out rewards to players who are earn motivated, that's probably not good in the long run either. So what's the right balance of people who are earn motivated versus players who want to, come into the game and play it like a normal game, or, actually want to be in the economy as well too. So there's different things like that we think about. And there's also very new interesting monetization models that you can do in Web3 as well too. There's an interesting concept where, we're going to start to probably introduce some kind of staking inside of the game. It's not going to be staking like you traditionally see inside of a Web3 product. It's going to feel really in-game and native. These are the things that are going to take a little bit of time, but this is basically the big play that we're working on. And when we talk about UA Engine, I say all these acronyms all the time, and I'm not sure if everybody fully follows every time, but UA Engine is basically all of this tech that we're building out here. UA stands for user acquisition, and essentially the goal inside of Pixels is we have a great game to be testing all this out on, and we want to basically figure out and get as much information and learn as much as we can to do this. And then once we start to get a good feel on how effective we're actually getting at targeting rewards and users, how we're growing, is revenue growing, is the pixel that we're distributing more efficient? Once we start to answer all these questions, that's when we start to think about how we take this system that we built and plug it into other things too. So if you looked at my Twitter the other day, we just put out a tweet kind of planting the seeds of what that looks like. But in the long run, I think this is still like probably 6 to 12 months away, to be completely honest, but these things take time, so we're trying to plant the seeds now. Is we're starting to put the seeds, and like we're starting to like, you know, talk to teams, all of this, and like what an acquisition would look like for certain teams. Essentially, can we take games that had some kind of promise, who are maybe even monetizing or have some of their economics right, but just we're not able to put an effective go-to-market strategy together? And are we able to use the tech that we built and the lessons that we've learned to help them grow and create basically like shared value alignment between, you know, us and them, essentially? So, I mean, there's a couple different models of what that could look like. I'm not completely sure what's going to be the right one. If, you know, we have them grow using Pixel and also like have them monetize using Pixel. If there's new tokens inside of these games that go to the community treasury when they're spent, like there's a couple different ways that we've been doing this, right? And we're like open to all of these. But I mean, yeah, our core focus is like making this ecosystem as strong as possible. So just keep that in mind too. Like this is not an abandonment of the ecosystem. If we try to expand horizontally, it's trying to strengthen it and actually create like net ecosystem wins. And yeah, just like a reminder too, it's like, yeah, there's long-term staked interest from team around this ecosystem. And I mean, yeah, it's the kind of stuff that we're thinking about every single day too. So I mean, yeah, that's kind of the game plan of what we're thinking there. So that went into like a little bit of the future of what we're up to. Essentially, we're trying to build an ecosystem that can be sustainable in the long run. What that looks like is getting more data driven, basically building out like really interesting new UA tech stacks, and then, you know, seeing what we can do further with this. Like obviously it's going to help make the Pixels game better that we have now, but then the question after that is like, can we grow this even more? So we're thinking big. We're putting all of the seeds for this right now, and this has kind of like been my last couple of months after, you know, finally got some breathing of the token room. It's like, okay, how do I start building org that will be like a bit bigger in terms of like vision, ambition, and the things that we're trying to accomplish than we maybe had previously? Because we're in the spot and the position to do so, we might as well go for it, right? So I think the vision's tight and concise. There's steps to get there. So if you're worried about us getting distracted, valid concern, but I think it's concise and like a clear vision to get there. You know, we're not trying to scope this too crazy. We're not going to like burn through treasury or runway trying to make this happen. Like it's only going to make sense if it makes sense, right? And we're quite cautious and careful about this kind of stuff, but it's an interesting rabbit hole to go down, and if not the very least, like a good thought process to build out our own internal tech better. So yeah, it seems like we also have a lot of chapter 2 questions. So yeah, like I said, there's a bunch of different types of people who watch these AMAs. The players outnumber all these other people. And we have so many people asking questions about chapter 2. So yeah, it's cool because there's such a crazy passionate user base that we have right now, and we're so incredibly grateful for this. I mean, I think this is like a tell of what Web3 can actually unlock, because if I'm being completely honest, I don't think Pixels is the best game in Web3 when it comes to quality, but we've done some things better than anybody else has when it comes to community building like a place for people to come together and socialize and like, you know, find a community. And I think that's something that a lot of other games have maybe neglected. So there's something that we've been doing right, obviously. So with chapter 2, we hear your concern. Essentially what we're going to try to do is like, I'm digging into, truthfully, if you want like the transparent truth, we were trying to get farmhand testing out this week. For some reason it rolled back a little bit. I am personally digging into the why of why I rolled it back today. I'm really going to push the team to get this out to farmhands either by end of week or early next week at the latest. That's basically the last crucial step before we get chapter 2 out. So when we actually do give out chapter 2 early access to these farmhands, we'll start to get some feedback on basically what the conversion of their current resources into chapter 2 looks like. That's the one area where I'm a little concerned about FUD, but if we get real players in with the real data and we get their feedback, I don't think it'll be an issue. We basically just want to address all these issues before we go out live with it. And then, yeah, they'll be allowed to make some content too. If we need like a little bit more time, we might also onboard some creators in. After that, we'll like TBD on that one. There's just like a little bit of coordination that we'd have to do that one. But I think it's a good idea, essentially, to get like a few creators in on the early access too, so you can get content out at the release of chapter 2. It's a win-win for everybody. You get the alpha, you get the content, and yeah, we get like a bit of marketing push from you guys as well too. So we'll look into that one as well. And then I mean, yeah, if you guys have any questions about chapter 2, have you been starting them, Heidi? We can go into some of those as well too. But I think a lot of it is going to start to get revealed when we finally get into these other people's hands. Because when we get into the farm hands, I don't care if they like tweet or leak about it. It's good to get some feedback. And then yeah, when we have chapter 2 out, that's going to be pretty nuts because it's going to be, it won't be like the most polished thing that you ever release, like that we ever release. Like I'll be transparent on it, but like what's interesting about chapter 2 is it's going to bring new opportunity, right? The entire meta of the game is going to shift drastically, and you know there's still that same earnings pool, right? So it'll be interesting. The people that figure out the metas earlier, there's going to be a huge advantage for them. Hopefully the end goal of the chapter 2 meta is also it's going to reward further progression inside of the game. It should be more anti-bot. That's the goal. And there should be interesting play around guilds too. So like, you know, we don't completely know ourselves, and we won't know until we release it exactly how it's going to go. The other promise that we're going to make to you guys is when we get chapter 2 out, it will probably need changes to it quite quickly. Our promise to you is that we'll be on it. So essentially how it honestly might need to go on our end is we might need to have chapter 2 in a completely ready state before we release it, and then have like a couple of days of breathing room for the team, because my honestly directive and expectation from the team when we get chapter 2 out is like it's gonna have to be all hands on deck for a week or two, like at least, because we're gonna need to update very quickly. We'll have to respond to comments, we'll have to patch things that we didn't see. That's how it goes. Like that's how we've been building for so long. I think it's fun, I think the team thinks it's fun, but I need a fully energized team when we get that going too. So yeah, like if I have to give a rough estimate, I think it's like 2 weeks out, maybe 3 weeks out at the latest. There's it's honestly time. Like I don't want to set the hard date because I've made a mistake with that before, where you know I hadn't been as dialed into like where chapter 2 is at and all of that. I have a personal much better idea of where it's at now. Like 2 to 3 weeks seems pretty realistic, and I honestly think if it looks like it's taking longer than 3 weeks, I think we'll just pull the trigger and just release it regardless, because I think it's time to do that. So I don't want to put like that hard date there because I don't want to repeat mistakes, but like it has to come out. It just has to come out. So we're close.
Okay, I've gotten lots and lots of questions, and yeah, my internet has been very finicky. Transparently, I am in an Airbnb and I am unimpressed. Anyways, okay, one thing I did want to acknowledge here, I've gotten a few questions since you've been talking about farmhands. So what are farmhands? How do I become a farmhand? So farmhands are, you probably come across some of them on our Discord. They kind of act on Discord like moderators, but we actually they're kind of a part of our community team in a sense that they help us in our community building, but they also are constantly providing us feedback from the game. So they're some of our biggest gamers, top players. They've been around. Some of them have been around since day one. So we meet with them every 2 weeks, and they provide us with feedback. We tell them our thoughts and what's coming, and it's like a huge part of our building in public, building along with the community, is building alongside with these community leaders that are called farmhands. Now, how do you become a farmhand? So thus far, it has been invitation only, and all of the people that have become farmhands are ones that us as the team and our community team see already kind of acting as if like they were a farmhand. And that means, you know, just being really welcoming, kind of being the face of the culture, the farmer friendly culture, and just being a light in the community already, and also being a huge gamer, like being like loving pixels and playing it a lot, and providing quality feedback. So we haven't onboarded any new farmhands in a while. There are plans to. It just comes down to team management capacity and all of that kind of internal fun stuff. So if you think that's something you want to do, just like really show up predominantly, I would say, in Discord, be really welcoming, really, really helpful to new players, like really show that you are the kind of person that would like to take on this kind of role. It's not the easiest role either, because you are often dealing with, you know, moderation issues. even in-game moderation issues.
Wi-Fi,
It's not all sunshine and roses. I think a lot of people think it is. It's not. So yeah, that's kind of the rundown on that. So yeah, rest assured, some of our top community leaders will be playing Pixels and providing us unfiltered feedback. I guarantee it. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I've seen a ton of good questions, and now we'll just get through all of these because there's some good stuff to address here. So, I think one is this one. So long-range cheaters using it to cut all trees of the land at the same time. It's pretty boring. What's the utility of this new update of trees growing at the same time? Yeah. So we have seen new cheats pop up inside of Pixels, and it's crazy because yeah, this is an industry-wide problem, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't solve it. And we do a lot of stuff to think about this kind of stuff. So it's funny because it's not funny, like Valorant and like some other of the competitive like MOBAs or shooters right now, they're having a big issue with this in their tournaments as well. The anti-cheats inside of these games are like at the kernel level, which is kind of nuts. So yeah, we have some new stuff that we're gonna try to basically ban some of this automation, but also a lot of people are getting login errors right now, and I can tell you that's not all a mistake. There are some false positives of people getting login errors. So if you notice, we have a lot of reports on Twitter and some other areas too that we, like a lot of people can't log into the game. What I can say is like there's been some new anti-cheat detection and some new anti-bot detection that's catching a lot of people. There's a few false positives.
Sorry, my Wi-Fi cut out. I'm sorry, I did not mean to cut you off. Yeah, I just wanted to add to this. If you're getting this error specifically, you're not banned. You're just being blocked from the game because our detection system is picking up on some sort of automated system that you're using. So if you're using some sort of automation, turn it off. Just turn it off and try to log into the game. Yes, there are a few false positives. So if you truly believe you are not doing anything beyond being a regular, normal player, please ping someone on Discord, reach out to our support team, and we'll look into your case. However, almost all of the cases that we have been seeing have been utilizing some sort of automated system. There you go.
Yeah, and okay, so on this note too, we don't really care about Chapter 2. We need you guys to delete the bots. So honestly, so Chapter 2, it's better gameplay, and it's gameplay that makes more sense, but also a lot of the reason why we focus so heavily on Chapter 2 and why we're building it is because we believe that the bot problem inside of Web 3 is multi-layered. So there's the detection and prevention side, which is some of the stuff we've been adding here, which you're seeing, and we just talked about basically some of the anti-bot detection, some like the blocks, all of this kind of stuff. There's the reputation side, so we're reworking that a little bit too. And as we start to bring on more people on the data analytics, like that's something that I'm gonna have them go a bit harder on as well. I think that's like the best first task when we start to build this team, when they're all onboarded. Basically have them redo our reputation system is something that works a little bit better. The other thing that you have to do too is like game design and the economic incentives as well. So Chapter 2, the game design is different, and it's also been designed in a way that should promote botting less, and it should make botting much less effective. So that's one of the end goals here. The other interesting thing too is like, yeah, I will say it, like no matter how good a bot is, when you introduce big changes, they all break because they have to like re-figure out how to like build it for this new stuff. So like first week or two after Chapter 2, like I would definitely be very active if you're a real player, because that's probably when like rewards will be the highest of all time per player typically, because you know bots won't have some time. But also the game mechanics, if they were to figure it out, are much less advantageous to them as well too, partly because of the guild system, partly because of the resource tiering, and partly because we're shifting rewards too. So rewards are going to be shifting towards the longer tail users. So essentially users who have progressed through the game more and who have been doing like more interesting stuff inside the game previously. So essentially if somebody wanted to bot all the way through, they would have to put a lot more investment into a single account. And it would actually be harder to multi-account too. Essentially in Chapter 2, multi-accounting does not give nearly as much of an advantage inside of the game because most of the industries and resources are single use at the time. So what that means is if you know people want to cut down wood or trees, essentially they're taking it away from their other bots, or they're taking it away from like their guild or other things like that too. And a lot of what we're working on is with the guild system, like the whitelisting of the higher tier resources that are turned in for more pixels. So a lot of Chapter 2, just to like be blunt, was like designed for like more cyber resistance and more anti-bot. And there's a bunch of things we're trying. I think it'll work. Like I feel good about it, but you really only know until it releases, right? So we'll see how it goes and we'll adjust accordingly. But that's also why you should be excited about Chapter 2. And then the other thing that we're working on too is the rewards. And like what I was all talking about with Project Neo, like this internal project that we're working on with user segmentation, incentivization, rewards. As we get a better idea and like we learn more and get a better data set on our users, we can also target the rewards more efficiently too. So it ties in with reputation, and it ties in with this other stuff, but like that's the key concept here, where it's like if we give out pixel to a bot, that's bad for us because the bot will never spend pixel, right? Or at least they won't spend net pixel. We don't want that. We want to basically be giving out rewards to people who want to be using the pixel token, because that's like the best and most efficient way to be giving it out. If our company goal is to basically eventually have more pixel getting spent than is given out, it's like that simple essentially. What we need to do is we need to like also find ways to give it to people who want to be using it, and definitely not giving it to bots, because that's like basically making our jobs so much harder. If we're giving out a lot of pixel to bots, that means that we need to get a lot of other people to spend even more, and that's way harder to do. Basically, it makes our job easier if we're giving out much less of the token to bots, and that's a lot of the tech that we're doing around user segmentation, reward attribution, and all of this kind of stuff. It's hard stuff to build. It's really, really hard to build actually. But if we pull it off, I think that's how you actually make Web3 gaming work. And that's why I'm excited about this. Like that's why this is so ambitious. There's a lot of stuff that like, yeah, we still haven't figured out and it's still not working. And yeah, it's funny because like some people look at pixels and they haven't actually like watched a single AMA. They don't do a deep dive. Like, yeah, we're pretty aware of all the faults inside of pixels. It's like, it's not a bad thing to have problems. It's like, are you fixing them, or do you have like a plan to do it? And like, do you want to as well too? What I can say on like my own personal motivation side is I don't want to waste my life working on something I don't think is going to work. I think we can do this, and yeah, I mean, like I have high conviction, or at least like I have like enough confidence where I want to be spending a lot of, you know, my own working years and like a lot of my time and energy doing this. So I mean, that's all I can do. Vouch on the personal side. It's like, this is what I want to do, and this is like where I'm spending my time trying to solve this problem set to see if we can make this work. But it is a really hard problem, and yeah, chapter 2 is a key part of this, so it all ties in together.
Yeah. Okay, a couple just quick questions on the bot topic. So how does the anti-bot botting work? Can you like educate us? So we've talked about this a little bit in the past, but we just can't really share exactly what we're looking at because they're listening, right? So if we were like, hey, if you do this action, you will get banned, then they're just not going to do that action and they're going to get creative and do something else, right? It can be a little bit of a catch up, right? Which is not great. So we can't be overly transparent, unfortunately. But I would also just say like,
just play
like a human being. I mean, that's what it is. If you're not playing like a human being, that's where the issues arise. And then, oh, okay. I saw this question a couple of times. So you guys aren't in game every day. You don't see them, but real players do. Why can't we just ban them on our own accord? Yeah, can you just stop and imagine the amount of bullying that would happen?
Yeah, well, so no, this is an interesting problem because, like, yeah, Layer Zero, if you guys have been following that, I've been following that one really, really closely because I think that's finally a good example of another company that's taking cyber protection and resistance seriously. There's truthfully not that many because they don't want to admit the problem that they have, but again, I don't think Web3 works until you figure out this problem. And I think this problem is almost application specific for every single app. Like I honestly, because I think this is such a big problem, if I thought there was a generalized solution to this, I would probably have pivoted Pixels into this specifically. Because I don't think any of Web3 works until you figure out the cyber resistance. But I think it, again, is application specific. I think it's like somewhat tied to revenue. I think like you have to think about metric optimization, all this kind of stuff. But Layer Zero, I think they're doing a really good job on cyber resistance. One controversial thing that they did, which I don't hate it, but I don't know how we would implement it. And like we'd have to put some resources to that. Is they had a bounty program on cyber, or on like cyber hunters basically, or cyber farmers, They also allow the ability to self-report too. Now the difference is doing this in a live ops way is different than like an airdrop type of way, because basically they can pause everything and they can take snapshots. So you can like take some time to go and look at the data, and there's like a pause between giving rewards. Like I guess if we wanted to do that, we would have to do like a 7 to 14 day hold on withdrawals and like have somebody like go and like look at all of this kind of stuff, or like have it out in the open. Maybe that's the right approach, but I mean, yeah, it's interesting to say the least. Or like having that self-report feature too. If anybody has an idea of how we can pull that off, I haven't been able to think about how that would actually fully work, besides like some kind of combination of reputation and multiple reports. Like there's some MMO stuff that's already been brought into this, and like some MMOs have already kind of like dealt with similar systems. We might just pull from that, but the issue is still a systems issue, I think, where it's like, okay, great, you found one, what happens when they make more stuff? And yeah, it's crazy, the tech that's getting behind some of these, it gets more complicated every single time too. So like we're catching on to some of the stuff, and like we have better detection tools that kind of get us a better idea of like groupings of users essentially, but there's more to it too. So yeah, we're investing a lot into this basically. Like this is the core investment inside of Pixels. How do you solve this specific problem? And that's like, yeah, I'm hiring a team of like probably 4 to 5 people specifically working on this stuff.
Free agora só pode vender no máximo 5 coisas.
So hopping over to more chapter 2 questions. So I'm a lone wolf. I enjoy playing the game, but don't force us to play like a team in chapter 2. You don't have to. You absolutely don't have to. You can stick to your own game loops. You can upgrade your spec, decorate it however you want, all of those sorts of things. The only point in time that you might find a little bit tricky is if getting those like very higher tier resources, because I'm sure a lot of lands will be gated by guilds. However, not all will. They won't. So you'll just have to try and get lucky in those situations, or maybe participate more in like the marketplace, getting resources that way. Okay.
Galinha já peguei.
Gone through a lot of questions already.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So anything OTC, it's just kind of do it at your own risk. We don't recommend it, obviously.
Yeah, don't ask we don't see anything.
Yeah. Exactly. But what I'm saying is be careful. Just be careful. Okay. Can we plant or use other people's industries on specs in
sobre as indústrias do spec.
So that's not in the design right now. So that's one of the issues of like anti-bot that we have to think about too, because the specs are going to be the area of attack that a lot of these botters will try to go for initially. What's interesting about the bots inside of Pixels right now is actually they don't bot Pixel too much. They really bought coins, and it's like the OTC stuff is like not inherently an issue, but a lot of the OTC traders are bot farms now. That's not surprising, because that's exactly what happens inside of any MMO, like RuneScape or WoW or anything like that. It's like that's just how it happens. Like that's generally how online games tend to trend. But yeah, we're trying to figure out some like resistance there with that. So I think how I want to do specs in the long run is we want to basically make it so that specs are able to be worked on by guilds who maybe don't own land. But the first focus with chapter 2 is essentially having the higher tier resources and the collaboration happen on the NFT land. And then if we start to see that that's not as accessible to players as we want, we'll put a larger emphasis on the specs as well too. So it's a bit of a balance, right? The question is like, will 5,000 lands be able to support all the real users inside of the game right now? Like say that we have 1 million daily active addresses, say it's like 600,000 to 700,000 real daily active users, 5,000 lands, that would have to be like about 1,000 people on each one. That might get a little crowded. So we think about this a lot, right? And it's going to be like something we have to like iterate on it basically too. But like we have dev capacity. Essentially like the devs will be fully honed in on trying to figure this stuff out. And then what we might want to do is we might want to introduce like different levels of access to land as well too. So we have tiering on guilds. Like maybe it makes sense for a guild to actually have their land open to everybody, but maybe they want like a coin fee to come into the land. So like that might be an easy solution too. Like essentially what we'll have when we have chapter 2 out is like we'll get really into the feedback stage again with you guys. What we want to do is we want to get a better base system out so that we can iterate on it. So basically, instead of doing like what we could have done is we could have done like a closed alpha with like 2,000 players for a couple of months, gotten the feedback, all of that. Like I hate that in the games industry, to be honest. I think that's just like such a slow and archaic way to build stuff. And I think the games industry, because I'm an outsider, I can say this, should take more inspiration from startups. So we're just going with like the Epic Ship It approach, even though the Epic Ship It approach is taking a little bit longer than we would have wanted to. It's just because like, yeah, some organizational things that I had to get the team oriented around. But like that'll be the approach moving forward too. We're saying like screw a closed alpha that takes like way longer to get out, gets you like some feedback. We'd rather just do it with all of you guys and have that trust with you guys that we just will build it and fix it if we need to make changes or pivot it. It's funny because a lot of you have onboarded basically after the token launched rather than before. If you are like an OG Pixels player, you know this is how we go and roll. Like we can do some great stuff when we're motivated and when we have like the right base to build off of. And we can build some stuff pretty quickly. Like we did Carnival, we did like all the crazy stuff on Ronin so quick. I feel pretty confident about our ability to adjust after chapter 2 if needed.
Okay. Seen some questions about like integrated avatars. Some people are like, how do you integrate your NFT collection? What about this one? What about that one? So we get a ton of requests. So we have a type form that you can fill out if you wish to request your collection to be integrated as an avatar. We get a lot of requests, and we are also highly limited on the number of collections that we can integrate that are on Polygon right now. We are going to switch up the system a little bit. Luke and I have been talking extensively about this.
Yeah. So here's the thing that's weird, right? Like that I don't think any of our teams love right now. You guys know that like avatars and pixels are one of the coolest things to build community, and something that we will never discontinue support on because it's like a core part of it, like the experience that we offer to people, right? It's kind of weird that, you know, because Ronin's a closed chain right now, people go and like mint new NFTs for pixels on Polygon. Don't love that. I don't think they like it either. So we're trying to figure out something there as well. Yeah, it doesn't make sense for that to happen. So yeah, once there's something there, we'll let you guys know if there is. But I mean, yeah, Ronin, like I think their plan is slowly opening up more and more, right? Yeah, we've kind of like flagged this particular issue to them, is what I can say.
Okay, is there an update on dungeons? So first of all, they're called caves, not dungeons. And that's going to be one of the further releases. So it's not going to come in the initial chapter 2 launch. It'll come in like one of the preceding ones.
Yeah, no, great question though. So yeah, basically how we view like the like long-term roadmap of Pixels is, again, we're like trying to split focus. We're trying to split the team into different teams, right? So that basically we can build out these big features and get live content and do the data stuff that we need in parallel. Right now we basically have one team that gets everything done at the same time. So when we like have resources in one area, or if we're trying to get like live content out, it's taking away the progress that we make towards other areas. So yeah, basically we're doing the work on caves and dungeons soon. That, if I have to be honest about an estimate, like just knowing where we're at with stuff now, we've done like a little bit of work on it already. Like it probably will be like, of being conservative, like 3 months after the release of chapter 2 to like fully get it out. There's still a bit of production work that needs to get done before we get on it. It's like high level design is there. We have like a lot of the art done already. Now it's like, how does it actually work? And then the big part about that loop is contestable lands. So it's finally going to be introducing the more competitive elements of gameplay. And also that's when you're going to start to see the highest tier resources inside of the game too. That's when we're going to get like tier 5 and tier 6 that guilds or like whoever is going to have to compete for. There's some cool gameplay that's coming essentially. It's all part of the plan. We got to resource these areas appropriately so that they actually get built in the times that we want. And yeah, once the work is getting done here, basically.
Okay. Okay. So I personally get this kind of messaging all the time from you guys. Just hire extra people to go in game and sit there and ban them all the time. So although this might seem like a good solution, it's not going to work because the minute you ban the bots, they just create new ones, right? So it's a lot of that like catch up, like we were kind of talking about earlier.
So what's interesting is like the tech around this stuff has gotten better. I can't speak too much onto this, to be completely honest, but we're doing some stuff where it's putting a dent in the ban create new stuff cycle. Like straight IP banning doesn't work anymore. Like that was the thing that maybe worked like 10, 15 years ago. If you played MMOs, like you get IP banned, right? That is 100% ineffective. Even like other stuff, it's like it's so easy to spoof some of this stuff, and there's like other bot solutions that have gotten a bit more advanced too. So like there's a lot of work that's getting put into like, okay, when you remove a bot, how do you make sure that particular bad actor does not come back into the ecosystem or game? It's not as easy as you would think, but there's some stuff happening there.
Okay, someone's complaining about the energy being too little for this energy party. So what you guys are forgetting is that this is not an energy party, okay? This is our live stream AMA, and yesterday we have our Twitter space. We just decided it would be really fun to give you guys a small energy booster while watching or attending the Twitter space. The energy parties are the big energy booster ones, and there is one in 2 days. So make sure you look at our in-game calendar or Discord calendars and announcements for the time in your time zone. Oh, okay. So tree density. So I don't think you're specifically asking about the tree density trait, but in last week's AMA, we talked a lot about NFT land gameplay and how some things were designed. Now we got a bunch of feedback on the land density trait and how they wanted something to be implemented. It's just like a little bit more like, I guess like respecting the trait a little bit more. And we totally hear you. We totally understand. So we went back to the drawing board while keeping in mind, obviously, the game balance that we've already been building off of for Chapter 2. We talked extensively about this with the game design team, and there will be implementing some changes. I believe it's going to be drop rate. Drop rate will be better for higher density lands versus, lands that don't have any trees. And I'm only speaking to NFT lands when I'm talking about this stuff. But yeah, I believe that's the change that will be implemented, but stay tuned for that.
Okay, lots of good questions. Okay, so one, don't abandon free-to-play players. They have a big impact on the game too. Yeah, so exactly. And even play-to-earn players, I think, have a big impact too. I don't think there's any issue with a player that comes into the game and is more earn motivated. Same thing with the free-to-play players too. Like that's not an issue. The question is just like, how many incentives should they be given? Like, what should they be? And like, what's the right balance between all these players too? So like, a lot of Chapter 2, the focus is on like progression and getting further through the game. It might make sense for like a free-to-play player to still join a guild for that reason, but it doesn't need to be an expensive one. And also remember, we give you Pixel, right? So like, we give you Pixel, use some of it to like get through the game and progress a little bit, right? Like that's kind of the point too. You don't have to like take money out of your wallet if we give you the Pixel to actually use inside of the game, right? So like make that part of the equation as well when you think about this stuff. But yeah, you guys are important players. None of these games inside of Web3 or any like multiplayer economic game would live without free-to-play players and that player base there, right? Like I think every MMO or game designer recognizes that you need other players that help make the game more fun and support the players who want to be, basically flexing on you. We basically need you guys because we need people to show off to you. That's part of it, right?
Okay. Reputation drop. Yeah, so in an update earlier this week, some of the quests and whatnot, we dropped the amount of reputation points you get for completion of those. And it all comes down to balance, right? So the reputation system is not going to work if every single player has to just do one easy task and then they can fully participate in gameplay, right? It needs to be more balanced across a lot of different areas. So we've been talking a lot internally about like kind of revamping this a little bit, making it smarter.
Yeah.
Luke, do you want to talk about it a little bit?
I mean, yeah, I think everybody knows that was a necessary change. What's the saying? Don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened. When we like, that's such a disrespectful way to say that. I'm sorry. But like the key point there is like, yeah, we wanted to make it like easier at one point because we were making some changes. Like we were adding withdrawal requirements. So like, you know, we eased it up a little bit there, and like the YGG one was like a bonus for that. Now, like this is some of the basically changes that we need to make to like make some more bot blockers as well too. We just need to make it like a bit more difficult for them, so we have to adjust this slightly too. So yeah, one thing I'm trying to communicate to the team is like there's bad psychology when you see a reputation score decrease. Like we really should only just be doing increases all around and like increasing requirement. But yeah, we have to like tweak this a little bit too. Again, we're still in the experimental phase. There's things we have to try here, all of that. Also, I thought this was funny. This comment was funny. Luke says Asian players bring most players. I play from Belgium and I spend in a month already €360 just to get energy and level my skills. Belgian players are great too. I'm just gonna say it. Yeah, no, I mean like that's the thing. We just like this is the stuff that we're trying to like figure out and automate basically and get like better insights on. Like who are the best players to reward? I guess now we gotta look more into Belgium. But yeah, no, you're great.
Beautiful place. Yeah, no, and that's something I love about Pixels and Web3 in general, though, is it's so multicultural. It's so international. There's people from every country, every culture, every background. There's like so much to learn from everyone else. It's just like I find it really beautiful.
É muita pergunta.
Okay. What else is there? Here we've answered a lot of these questions already, so you guys can just kind of re-listen.
Sometimes I see players or multiple accounts and report them. Does that help in any way to clean the data? Thank you very much for your effort on the one. Yeah, so that does help. It's marked in our mixed panels, in our different dashboards, and like a piece of the equation. Like somebody in our team has actually built like a pretty cool ML algorithm. And this is like just a separate thing. It's like used to help verify some of the other stuff that we're doing on bot detection. And yeah, that's like a piece, I'm pretty sure, at least. Like I'll double check on this. Of that.
Cara, seleciona a pergunta que eles querem responder.
We do need a guild chat inside of the game. We cannot reach every player that bought a shard, so they don't know the rules of the guild. How can we reach them properly? Yes, so chapter 2 is when we have to basically start addressing some of this stuff more. Basically, like I think guilds will actually finally be useful in chapter 2 or make more sense. So when we have chapter 2 out, we'll probably also see a lot of other guild features that we need to build. So I will go back into guild Discord chat and start to get a feel of what that looks like with you guys. Yeah, apologies also. I've been like a little bit out of Discord if you're used to seeing me there. I'll start diving back more into that because we're in a feedback phase again soon too. But yeah, we will get some of the feedback around guild features that we need to add. Figure out like what are the important ones that we need to build. Yeah, maybe like we get third parties to help too. I mean, what's interesting is like what I'm trying to figure out now is we don't necessarily need to build all this stuff ourselves for some of this functionality in UX. Like, right, Voxels has been doing a really good job of building out some better UX. Like Pixels Tips has built like some crazy tooling that honestly, without the Pixels game would be much worse. So there might be some things like this for guilds too, and it's like, okay, we actually do support third-party tools. Like, does it make sense to keep it third-party? Should we like maybe open source some parts of our front end, and then like reward contributions that way? There's like some things I'm thinking about there where it's like we need to get operationally a little bit more set before we do that. I'm like basically bringing in help to do that now, and once we have some of those things settled, like we can start putting some bigger resources into initiatives there, because there's like potentially easy wins that are not capital costly for us. There's just some operational overhead that we would have to figure out.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of really good ideas. You guys have constant great feedback on like some really cool extra little tools or some polish or something like
Like
that. So
guns.
please make okay, please make sure you're adding them to our Canny, which is our feature request system. That's kind of like a really good source of truth, and then you can get other people to upvote on that as well, so you can like really rally everyone together, and then we'll definitely see it. So okay, I think
Yeah.
we've. Oh yeah,
Yeah, and last
like
one, I guess. Yeah. So Q on
very
Industries,
cool.
that's coming. I'm not sure if that's coming at the direct release of Chapter 2. If not, it's coming very shortly after. But that's getting worked on now.
Oh, I didn't even know that. Great,
Yeah.
love to hear it. Okay, wonderful. Is there anything else you wanted to address, Luke?
No, a lot of really good questions today. Yeah, no, appreciate you guys taking the time to ask these, and thank you guys for showing up to these. These are honestly really helpful for us. And they help us kind of understand what we need to be working on a bit better. Like, for example, we're seeing the pain of like some of the stuff happening now. We're seeing why we need to get chapter 2 out urgently because of like some of these issues. So yeah, this just is like creating a greater sense of urgency in me too. And this is, yeah, great, helpful info for us. So appreciate the patience with this. Like, we really, really are trying here. And yeah, I mean, I think this was good. So thanks for coming today, everybody.
Opa,
We'll keep you guys updated on chapter
caiu
2
aqui a câmera.
timelines and when we start getting this into the
Vou
hands
ajeitar.
of these early testers. You'll probably see it on X or Twitter like immediately when we do that, because I don't care if they post or leak anything. And I think that's it.
Amazing. All right. Thank you all so much. So reminder, there is an energy party in 2 days. So make sure you go and look at any of the calendars for your local time zone. And then, yeah, we'll see you next week for our regular Twitter
Quem sabe
spaces
faz ao
and, of course,
vivo.
our AMAs. Bye, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Ok. Finalizado aí. E esse foi o AMA de hoje, né? O AMA Pix Live Stream. Finalizado aí. Show. Valeu aí a todo mundo que acompanhou. Vamos ver se a galera tem alguma pergunta. Vamos ver se a galera tem alguma pergunta aqui. Não, tranquilo. Obrigado aí por todos que assistiram. Valeu aí, tamo junto.